I'm going to be showing you how to improve your canvases and get a much smoother surface to paint on. And I'm only going to be addressing these pre-primed canvases you get online or at any art store, not building them from scratch because nobody's got time for that. So here's what we'll need. Now, I know there are many ways to go about this, but these are just the supplies and the method that's worked for me. So first, what we'll need is some 220 grit sandpaper, then some 400 grit sandpaper. Most important here is the gesso. I just used this Artist Loft brand gesso I got from Michael's because it was the cheapest. Finally, we'll need a brush, separate from the one you would paint with. You can get specific gesso brushes. Typically, you'd want them a little larger than the one I have here. I just prefer this one because the bristles don't fall out, so that's what I'll be using. The first step is sanding the whole surface of the canvas thoroughly with the 220 grit sandpaper. Once that's done, repeat the process again with the 400 grit sandpaper. Again, remembering to be thorough and cover the entire surface area of the canvas. You'll want the canvas to have a smoother base before applying the gesso. Now, if you really wanted, you could stop the process here because this will already leave the canvas much smoother, but for the best results, I would recommend applying the gesso. Now I'm going to show you how to apply the gesso. I'm just going to pick up some gesso on my brush and just draw a line down the canvas here. And then cover the canvas with the gesso in a crosshatch pattern. Once you've covered one section of the canvas with gesso, very gently drag the brush from one end of the canvas to the other to smooth out the surface as much as possible. Gesso can dry quickly to the touch, so it's important to smooth out the surface before then. If any gesso drips down the sides of the canvas, you can lightly brush those off as well, so there isn't clumps of gesso on the edges of your finished canvas. This isn't my best work here, admittedly. I was trying to stay out of the way of the camera, but this still shows accurately enough the right steps for this stage. Just keep repeating the same steps as you work your way down the canvas. Draw a line of gesso with the brush, then cover the surface area of the canvas in a crosshatch pattern, and finally, smooth out the canvas by dragging the brush across the whole surface. Now we wait for the canvas to dry. This can take several hours, so I would leave the canvas in an area with little traffic, so any dust or pet hair doesn't find its way onto the canvas while it dries. This next part I will only recommend to those that really want to get serious about their painting. It's not a necessary step, but one I choose to do every time. So I'll put a timestamp on screen here if you want to skip this part. Because gesso is heavy and wet, it can have unintended consequences on your canvas. Let's say you did everything right and let the canvas dry for a few hours and come back to find that one of the corners of the frame is now warped. For me, that's a deal breaker. So this is what I built to prevent that. This is a 2x2 foot plywood board that I have drilled 1/2 inch metal offset clips into at each corner the canvas would sit. So while the canvas dries, I set the canvas on the board and carefully align the offset clips so that they are just covering the edges of the canvas. Then lightly screw in the clips so that they hold the canvas firmly in place without putting too much pressure on the corners. This way, while the canvas dries, it won't move, and you'll stop those pesky corners from warping on you. Once the canvas is dry, we're going to go over the whole surface again with the sandpaper. This time, we're only going to be using the 400 grit sandpaper. Once the surface of the canvas has been smoothed out, you'll want to sand all the sides of the canvas, this time with the 220 grit sandpaper. Just enough to smooth out any rough edges from gessoing earlier. Once the whole canvas has been sanded, you're ready to put another coat of gesso on. We're going to use the same method as we did earlier, but we're going to try to work a little quicker this time. The second layer of gesso dries and becomes tacky really quick, so we'll want to work fast to smooth out the surface before that happens. Just like before, drawing a line of gesso down the canvas, covering the surface in a crosshatch pattern, and finally smoothing out the surface by dragging the brush from one end to the other. While the canvas is drying, here's another helpful tip. Sometimes you'll find canvases with corners like these where it doesn't lay flat. The best thing to do here is just treat the corner with a hairdryer. More often than not, the heat fixes the issue. If you need, spritz it with water, then use the hairdryer. Now that the second coat of gesso has dried, you guessed it, we're taking the 400 grit sandpaper and sanding down the entire surface again. And with that, you're done. I know it may seem like a lot, and it probably sounds more complicated than it is, but it's mostly just layers of sanding and gesso, and eventually you'll have a much smoother canvas, which will help out your paintings a lot. I'll list all the equipment and supplies I used in this video in the description, along with chapters so you can easily find your place and not get lost. I post videos every Monday of my pet portraits, so if you have any other painting questions or would like to commission a painting of your pet and see them featured in a video, you can email me on my website at any time. Thanks for watching, everyone.